The 2024-25 Premier League campaign is on the horizon. In preparation, we're previewing every single team and discussing how they'll shape up over the next campaign. We take a look at the transfer business conducted by the teams so far and offer suggestions of who else they should move for before the season gets started. Now we're on to Nottingham Forest. They scraped survival last season despite a points deduction and now will be looking to push up the Premier League table. We analyse their business so far and who they should be looking to add before the campaign gets underway. This is our 2024-25 season preview for Nottingham Forest. Alright, let's talk about Nottingham Forest then. We like to start these previews by reflecting on last season. Last season was, I wouldn't say it was disappointing for Forest because they stayed in the Premier League, but they weren't great. They're 17th in the Premier League. I think a lot of people would argue they only stayed up because of the poor quality of the bottom three. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, slightly. It was a really tough season for Forest. Obviously, there was the points deduction as well, which didn't help. But nonetheless, I think they would have been down there anyway. It was a tough campaign. It didn't really feel like it was going well, and I am inclined to agree. I think if there was a stronger, if the teams that came up were stronger, I think Forest could have been in trouble. I don't think Nuno Espirito Santo inspired anyone. I don't think Forest played.
I think Steve Cooper did in the first half.
No, he didn't. No, it was. And I mean, that change was still interesting, wasn't it? To sack Cooper and bring in Espirito Santo. Whether that's the right change, we don't know. I mean, they're in the Premier League. The main thing for Forest is they're in the Premier League and they can improve on what we saw last season. Going into this season, I mean, they love making signings. We've seen that over the last 2 years. We'll get into that in a minute. It's ridiculous once again. But hopefully this season it might go well because last season's signings, most of them weren't great.
Well, their attempt to, or their view of the transfer market seems to be if they throw enough shit at the wall, some of it's going to stick. And it has in places. Signings like Morgan Gibbs-White have been excellent additions.
Yeah, brilliant.
But then for every success, there's been about 5-10 failures. And it's just not sustainable. There's a reason that there are profit and sustainability rules. It's not sustainable to keep doing that. Forest have got to be smart with their recruitment. I think this summer, to be fair to them, it looks a lot smarter. But yeah, obviously Forest were deducted 4 points last season. Even if you were to add that to their tally, though, they're still below that 40-point threshold that we normally consider to be that safety. Obviously, in recent seasons, that's been a little bit lower, and I think that is now a common thing in the Premier League because of the strength of the top sides. It does mean all of the bottom 10 tend to score quite low. So I think it is now more closer to 38 would be accurate rather than that 40-point mark. But yeah, for Forest, it feels like they've escaped relegation by the skin of their teeth for 2 consecutive years now. This season has to be stronger for them. This season they need to kick on a bit more. If not, I think the quality coming up from the Championship is quite decent this year, and it will be very tight for Forest to stay in the league. So let's have a look then at what they've done to try and address some of the gaps in their squad. We'll start with the outgoings though, and firstly, we kind of have to talk about an incoming to talk about an outgoing here. Marko Stamenic has joined from Red Star Belgrade for 4.7 million, and he's immediately gone out on loan to Olympiacos. There's nothing dodgy going on here at all.
No.
Completely normal. I get it to a certain degree. If he does really well at Olympiacos on loan, then I assume he'll come in and play for Forest. But it does look a little bit like they're just buying a player to send to Mavropanos' other club.
Yes, that is exactly what it looks like. He could be a decent player, but I'll be intrigued to see how he does at Olympiacos. But realistically, Mavropanos knows what he's doing.
Yeah, but and he was a great player. If he does really well at Olympiacos this season, then I'm sure Forest will look to integrate him into the team. So not a bad signing there. Only 4.7 million. It's not a huge loss for Forest. Orel Mangala then joining Lyon for 20 million. I think this is really good business. A player who wasn't particularly highly rated at Forest, while the Forest company went out on loan the second half of last season to Lyon. I think they had better players on the side. I think they've brought better players in. Yeah. I don't think this is a huge loss at all. They've got so many numbers in midfield. To lose one player for 20 million, not bad. I think that's a good price to get for Mangala.
It's a really nice fee. It's a really nice fee for a player that didn't play for you for the last 6 months because you sent him out on loan anyway. So good bit of business.
Yeah, definitely. Then Brandon Aguilera. I think that Mavropanos has spent a bit of time in Portugal and France because Lyon and Rio Ave appearing a bit on a couple of times on this outgoings list. But Brandon Aguilera joining Rio Ave on a free transfer. He's someone who never really found his way in the Premier League, and he's just not that level, unfortunately for him.
Yeah, it on a free as well. It's just a bit. It's a shame, really, but it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And then Moussa Niakate, Lyon again, 27 million. I think it's an interesting one because I do think he was quite good for Forest at centre half, but with a signing that we're going to talk about in a moment, they've brought in at the back. I think with the centre halves they have at their disposal,
it's a good fee.
I don't think it's a bad fee to get for a player who was, I believe, approaching 30, so not bad there for Niakate. Jonathan Panzo gone out to Rio Ave on loan. Again, Rio Ave appearing. It's a nice loan move for him, and
if he does well, he does well. He could come back in and be a decent player. I'll be intrigued to see how he does out there.
Yeah, and then Lewis O'Brien going to LAFC. I think there's a lot of excitement around O'Brien when he first joined Forest, but he's never really settled in. But he's going to have fun in America.
Yeah,
I'm
great,
sure.
have a great time.
So, yeah, enjoying the Los Angeles sun. Let's get into the more interesting part, the incomings. Who have they signed? Now, we'll first talk about their signing from St. Pauli. Eric Da Silva Moreira, 1.5 million from St. Pauli. This was someone I hadn't heard of before doing any research for this video, but upon a bit of research, he does look like a good player. Obviously, he played for St. Pauli last season. That was under Fabian Hertzler. So he did quite well in that system, and I think a lot of people expected him to either go out on loan or be in the development squad this summer. But he's actually looked really good, or this season he's looked really good over this summer. He's been playing in the pre-season friendlies, and there's a lot of belief that he could come in and be a really solid backup to Neco Williams on that right back position.
Decent player. I do worry that it is very much an unknown, but if he turns out to be very good, then it's a brilliant piece of business. So. I mean, it is a bit of a gamble, but at 1.5 million, it's not that bad at all, really.
And on a player that is a backup.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like they're relying on him to start every week. 1.5 million, there's no real downside here.
No.
At worst, they lose him for nothing, but 1.5 million, for Premier League clubs, it's a bit of a drop in the ocean. So I don't think that's a huge loss, and he could be a fantastic footballer, in which case, huge upside there.
Brilliant.
This is the sort of deal that Forest need to be making in order to make progress, rather than just splashing loads of money on random players like Keylor Navas playing for a season and then disappearing again. Mental. But yeah, I think these are the type of signings that Nottingham Forest need to make. Then we've got Elliot Anderson of Newcastle for 35 million.
I like it.
It's an interesting one. I think he's a good player. I think 35 million is very steep, but obviously that is an inflated price, and they did get a bit of money back from Odyssey's Vlachodimos involved in that deal. So it's not like they've lost out loads. We don't actually know how much that is because it's an undisclosed transfer. But 35 million for Anderson, it looks steep, but I get why they've brought him in. I
think he's a decent player. I expect him to get quite a few minutes in this Forest side, and realistically, it's a good deal because what I like about it is he's a proven player. We've seen that he can cut it in the Premier League, and that was for Newcastle. For Forest, he could be a game changer in those big games. When you look at those relegation games, those crunch battles, relegation 6-pointers. He's the type of player that could be the difference in one of those games. I think it's a good bit of business.
Yeah, my only concern with it is I'm not sure he's a starter. I don't think he gets in the midfield three of Sangare, Danilo and Gibbs White, and then you question 35 million for a player who I don't think starts. It feels steep, but I think it's not a bad bit of business. It's just the question mark of whether he starts or not. I'm not even sure if he's a second rotation option in that position because they've got Dominguez. So I think he can play attacking midfield as well. So that versatility is useful, but it feels like a position they didn't need to address with 35 million. So it's a good player, an isolated signing. It's a good signing, but I'm not sure this Forest squad. I'm not sure it's what needs.
Fair enough.
It's what they need. So yeah, I don't think. I'm not sure. We'll see how he plays. If he turns out to be brilliant, then it's a good bit of business.
Yeah.
And then Carlos Miguel joining from Corinthians, £4 million for the tallest goalkeeper in the Premier League, tallest player in the Premier League in general. It feels like they're a bit annoyed at conceding so many from corners, so just on a really tall goalkeeper to claim them all. Obviously, at $4 million, it's a low risk transfer because I know obviously he's a goalkeeper coming in from Brazil. There's not a lot of knowledge on how well he's going to come in and do, but he is tall, which is always helpful for a goalkeeper, and it's very low risk at £4 million.
Yeah, he's big. Hopefully he's not bad. Again, it adds Forest's merry-go-round of goalkeepers over the last couple of seasons has been entertaining to watch. Yeah. Hopefully, Carlos Miguel can come in, can be that starter for the whole season, be consistent and deliver some good performances for Forest. And again, similar to what was about Anderson, he's a type of goalkeeper that can make those saves that can win you the biggest games, can make the difference in the games where you need to pick up points. I think it's a good signing. It's a cheap price. It's a nice deal. Yeah,
and worst comes to worst, they can always bench him for the other 5 goalkeepers they've got on them. They don't have that many, to be fair, right now, but they
finally got rid of them.
That is true. Vlachodimos disappearing, but yeah, Miguel coming in. I think it's a low risk. Be interested to see how he does. Then the next signing I think is a fantastic bit of business. Nikola Milenkovic from Fiorentina for £12 million. Now, yes, he is fast approaching 30, but he is a player who can provides some really strong leadership in that back line. And I think with, some slightly younger centre-halves around him, not Willy Bolly, but, slightly younger centre-halves, I think he can add some real European experience, real leadership into that back line, and real quality. He's a very good footballer. We saw how crucial he was to Fiorentina getting to the Conference League final last year and obviously losing it again. But he's got experience of losing 2 consecutive Conference League finals. So he's been there, he's done it, he's a good player. I think he'll come in and provide some real quality for Forest. For me, this £12 million is an absolute steal. Brilliant pickup.
£12 million to sign a European pedigree centre-half is a brilliant deal. He will come in and solidify the back line. And this is really good from Forest. They've done with Miguel, with Milenkovic. They're really shoring up that defence where they were so leaky last season.
Yeah.
And that if these are the kind of players that can stop you conceding so many goals, and if you do that, you're going to turn over more points. Another really good signing.
Yeah, very true. And then the final signing, £6 million, Jota Silva from Vitória de Guimarães. This is an interesting one for me. I don't know much about him. He can play up front, or he can play on the right wing. He had an okay season in Liga Portugal last season. It's a bit of an unknown one, but again, at $6 million, I don't hate this. I think it could come in and prove to be very good. I think it adds a really nice third choice striker because obviously you've got Wood, you've got Awonyi, they've got a couple others, we're going to talk about them, but I think he'd come in as that third choice option and add something different to what you get offered from Awonyi and Wood. So I quite like that. I think it'll be interesting to see how he does. So let's have a look then at the squad screen. Let's have a look at how it looks on paper. There are still quite a few footballers here, but then you look around and there's positions they don't have so many. We'll start in goal. They've got Miguel, Sales and Turner. I have no idea who's going to start out of these three. You think Miguel's coming in, so he would start, but then Sales been playing a lot in pre-season, so I wouldn't be surprised to see either of those two. We could even see Matt Turner come in and start, which
maybe
would be amusing.
Yes.
So hopefully that happens. But yeah, Forest have got 3 good goalkeepers there. 3 goalkeepers who can play in the Premier League. Good quality keepers. There's no issue there.
Yeah.
Then the back line. Left back, you've got Aina, Toffolo and Richards. Provided Richards comes back in and does a good job this season, I don't think they really need a left back.
No.
Toffolo obviously was suspended, I think, for last season, wasn't he? With betting charges. So he missed a lot of football last year, but he'll come back in and look to do a job. And obviously, Ola Aina was fairly crucial for them last season. A very good player. And did a very good job. Very reliable. Your centre-halves then. At left centre-half, you've got Murillo and you've got Willy Bolly. And at right centre-half, Milenkovic, Omobamidele and Worrell as well. I think Worrell might have been out on loan as well last season. So they've got players who... But I think they've got great starting centre-halves there and then decent backups.
Yeah. It is a good backline to us. I mean, Milenkovic and Omobamidele is 2 great right centre-halves. I think it's a bit of a shame that you have to bench one.
We've got Murillo in there, who's very solid.
It's a good backline. It's a really good backline.
Yeah, and then at right back, obviously Williams, and then Moreira as backup. Aina can play that role as well. So you've got options there. I don't think that's a huge concern for us. I think that backline is fairly settled. If there was an option to go and find a slightly better left centre-half cover, or maybe another right back option, I think they might explore that. But I think that defence is solid enough with Moreira looking capable of playing at this level. In midfield, then we'll start with defence midfield. They've got Sangare, Freuler and Yates. I find their midfield weird. I don't think Freuler will play. I'm not sure whether Freuler will play that deeper role, whether he'll play the other midfield role, but they've got so many central midfielders it's difficult to manage. I'm surprised I've not looked at moving any of them on, but obviously Yates has just signed a contract extension. I don't know. I understand that Forest fans probably really like Yates, but I don't see the hype.
He's another one of those where if he's on your team, he's brilliant. To play against him, he's an absolute cock.
He just goes around just kicking people.
But he's brilliant. But that's good for Forest because again, as I said, if he's on your team, you love him. I'm sure if I was a Forest fan, I think he's brilliant. Just go around, run into people, and have a jolly up. But to play against him, it's horrible.
Yeah, I think when he came into the Premier League a few years ago, I didn't think it was Premier League quality. I still don't really think he's Premier League quality, but he's been here now a couple of years and he will always put a shift in for Forest. Sangare is, I believe, one of the top defensive midfielders in the league, so that's a very good coup. And they've managed to hold on to him as well throughout this summer, which has been a surprise. I think unless there's a late bid, that midfield is probably settled. I think, with Sangare starting and decent options in rotation, that's absolutely fine. Looking across the other midfield, to spot that left midfield, left central midfield, you've got Danilo, Dominguez, Anderson, and Jundro Shelvey is still on the books. He was at Sivasspor last season, but I think he's now returned from that loan. Whether or not he goes back out on loan,
I don't think he's going to be playing in the Premier League.
I don't think he's going to be playing Premier League football, but he is there as a fourth option if they need him. We spoke about Elliot Anderson, how he can play that deeper role, but he could also play in attacking midfield. Dominguez can do a similar thing. He could also play out wide. I think he's a fantastic player.
Yeah,
really started to prove that in the league last season. He was brilliant in Serie A. And then Danilo, which is, I think, why they've started to look more at South America, at those cheap options for players like Miguel, because they saw Danilo come in. They bought him from Brazil for around 10 million, I want to say, maybe even cheaper than that. And he's come in and done a really, really good job in that midfield.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's a midfield of good quality, and you have to say that. I'm trying to look at this Forest side, and there is hope for these positions. I do think they need to shift one of those. Probably be John Joe Shelby. I love John Joe Shelby, but I don't think he can play Premier League football anymore. But Danilo was a brilliant addition, and hopefully he can prove that again this season.
Yeah, definitely. Down on the left flank, they've got Hudson-Odoi and Mighton. I have slight doubts there because, obviously, no doubts around Hudson-Odoi. I think he had a fantastic season last season. I don't think he'll be able to match those numbers. The thing for Forest at the moment is I think the midfield and defence is really strong. I worry about how they score goals because last season they relied on Wood scoring 20-odd goals. Not that high, but he scored a lot of goals last season. Hudson-Odoi scored 8 from 2.7 XG. Which is an overperformance that you just can't expect him to keep up. Because basically he just cut inside and finesse one top corner every time.
Yeah.
Now, brilliant goals, and he's got a great catalogue now, so when you're flicking back through the years, he'll have a great time. But that's not sustainable for me in the Premier League, because fullbacks will catch on to that, and they won't let him cut inside as easily you would expect. Now, he might just keep doing it, and Forest will then, they won't care about what I'm saying. But I do think if Hudson-Odoi can't keep just doing that. They are going to struggle to find those clinch goals. I don't think Mighton is going to realistically play in the Premier League. He's about 25 now. He's been playing a lot. He's had a lot of low moves. I don't see him coming back in and doing anything.
It's a shame. A lot of promise around him when he was younger, but it just feels like he's reached 25 now. It's a bit like
when do you stop being a youngster?
Exactly. You can't live up to potential forever, and eventually. Yeah. It's a shame because a few years ago he looked like he was a very, very good player.
We played a fair bit for them in the Championship. They took the step up to the Premier League, and he's just gone out on loan since then. I think it would be prudent just to let him move on now. Maybe, they don't need him around, and they do need to sign some wingers. Looking on the right hand side, they've just got Anthony Elanga and Bowler, and Bowler's another one who was out on loan last season. So I think they'll be looking to bring in another winger. That's something they've definitely looked at in the market. And then attacking midfield, Gibbs White. Gibbs White can also play out wide. He's also their only option attacking midfield. Anderson can play that role. Dominguez can play that role.
Yeah.
They're not out and out attacking midfielders, but they can do that job. Yeah. So I think in that regards, they'll probably be all right. Leading the line then, they've got a few options here. The bottom two, Emmanuel Dennis, has never really looked to be at the standards.
No.
Yui Joe Huang, another one who was a pointless signing. They signed him for something around 10 million, and they've just not played him.
Dennis was an expensive one as well, weren't it,
I think so.
I mean, I don't know why they signed him off Watford. He wasn't great at what he did. Alright. I mean, I remember having him in my FPL team at the time because he put up some deep, but he wasn't brilliant. He was okay at Watford. Forest went over to sign him.
He had a spell, didn't he, at the end of that 22-23 season when Watford went down. I think he had a good couple of games at the end of that season. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon, or you jumped on the FPL bandwagon. But I think he's someone who
cut your losses.
Yeah, hasn't really looked good for Forest. Then obviously Silva was spoken about, new signing. Chris Wood and Awonyi. Obviously Awonyi was out for large parts of last season. And Chris Wood's someone who we don't think can cut it in the Premier League anymore, but then he keeps showing time and time again.
He was brilliant. He's just going to score
goals.
He had a really... Was it the turn? I think it was the turn of the year. He had a really strong...
He had, between December and January, that Christmas period, he was just scoring.
I remember
he got a hat-trick or something, didn't he?
Away at St James's Park on Boxing Day, and he scored a double, and Forest took the game to Newcastle. I think that's right.
Find his,
he might not
his
be Boxing Day.
patch.
He incredible. He was in brilliant form, and if he can do that again, if he can find another purple patch, he could be really
hat-trick.
Hat-trick against Newcastle.
Park, and he scored the week before and got an assist against Bournemouth. Another little, Christmas
Boxing Day bonanza.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had a great run in March, April, where he scored in 4 consecutive matches. So
he's incredible.
He has these little spells to remind you of his quality.
I think Awonyi's a good striker as well. If he can stay fully fit, he will be he's a decent player.
Very true. Shall we have a look at some other options then for Forest? Now, the first one is someone they've been linked with very strongly is Ramon Sosa. He plays in the Argentinian leagues for Talleres. He's a Paraguayan winger, and he looks really exciting. There's certain stats where you go, yes, it's slightly inflated because of the Argentinian leagues, but they are still encouraging. Successful take on to me is one where you can go, that's fairly translatable between leagues. 3.72 successful take ons per 90, that's up in the 99th percentile. That's really strong. It shows that dynamism, that want to go and take players on. I wouldn't read too much into those non-pen goals. He averages a non-pen goal at 0.5 non-pen goals per 90.
Won't do that in Premier League.
So he's scoring every other game pretty much. But that doesn't translate very easily to the Premier League, so he's not going to put up 19 goals, I don't think. But he could come in and provide some really nice cover to Hudson-Odoi. I think he would add. He's a very pacey player, very good dribbler. I think if you're looking for someone just to come on and really terrorise, after Hudson-Odoi's done it for 60 minutes, you bring on Sousa to give him 30 minutes to go and run at a fullback. That fullback's having a horrible day. I think it would add a really nice rotation option and someone with a lot of potential there.
Yeah, definitely a decent player. He's a dangerous player as well, and as you say, he's the type of player that he will cause fullbacks problems. But I've been intrigued to see what his attacking output would be in the Premier League. Obviously, it would only be a rotation role, so I think it'd be a pretty safe deal because you wouldn't be relying on him to come in and score week in, week out. Yeah, he's a decent player, and it would make sense. It's a smart signing.
He's not matching his numbers in Argentina, though, where he's putting up a goal every other game and an assist every 3. So his contributions are phenomenal out there.
They're incredible.
That's not translatable. But 67th percentile for shots total as well, 2.42 shots per 90. Shot creating actions up in the 74th percentile, 4.28. So he's a player he's very good at getting shots away, very good at attacking areas. And if you can take up those sort of positions and try and get a couple of goals for Forest, it'll be worthy signing. I think it'll be about 5-10 million, so fairly low risk. I quite like it.
Yeah, definitely.
Then the other option is someone we've already spoken about this summer because he's been linked with a lot of clubs, Ben Sheaf. I think if they are using, if Shelby does move on and they use Elliot Anderson as attack midfielder, and Dominguez is also attack midfielder / wide cover, another midfield option isn't too bad. And I think Sheaf's numbers in the Championship last season were absolutely phenomenal. You look at his FBref profile, an absolute sea of green. Because he's a really quality footballer. So, I think he'd come in and provide some really nice cover to Danilo in that role. I think, and then you can use Nicolas Dominguez in higher positions. You can use Elliot Anderson as attacking midfielder. So you've got options there, but 98th percentile for tackles, 3.68 per 90. 96th percentile for progressive passes, 8.34 per 90. So he's putting up a lot of really strong numbers. And you can read his FBref profile yourselves. Phenomenal footballer. I think he'd come in and provide some really good cover, and around 15-20 million pounds seems like a good deal. Yeah,
very rare you see a player that is so good at doing everything. He's an all-round brilliant midfielder, and it'd be a brilliant option for Forest. They would have to probably fight with a few other teams to get him, and it could get pretty pricey, but he is a brilliant player.
Yeah, definitely. And then for Forest, I mean, they've been linked with a few other players. There was a Brazilian winger, Riquelme, I think his name is, who they've been looking at. They've been tracking. He's 17, 18, something like that. And so he's a very young player, someone they're looking to sign. That does seem to be Forest's new ethos, is to try and get some of those young players in, which makes a lot of sense because you buy them cheap. They have such high potential, such high resale value. It makes a lot of sense to be scouting like that, rather than just buying Keylor Navas and other random footballers who were good 5 years ago. So I think Forest recruitment strategy seems much more strategic. It's an actual strategy, a lot more sensible. And I think there's optimism. There should be optimism amongst the Forest fans. There's some good recruitment and some good names they're being linked with at the moment.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's been it's been a positive summer for Forest, I would say, and they'll be hoping that can translate onto the pitch. Whether it will be interesting to see, but I think as you say, there should be hope there that Forest can bring the fight really and can excel at the table. If I was to predict something, or if I was to say what I think they will progress. I think they will positively move up the table. If these players can perform, because they've got the right, it's a decent squad. I look at this quality. That squad shouldn't be 17th. They shouldn't be fighting. I'm not saying they might be on the echelons, of a relegation fight, but that'll be definitely towards the top of it. Whether that's, even if it's 5th, 14th, 15th, that's still progress. I do have questions over Nuno Espirito Santo, but if he can get it right, it could be a good year for Forest.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a strange one. I think potentially the limiting factor is Nuno Espirito Santo. I don't think he plays particularly encouraging football. I think it's very negative. But if it keeps them in the Premier League, it keeps them in the Premier League. I think they will probably look to move for an exciting match. I think they're in the position Fulham were a few years ago when Fulham brought in Marco Silva. They need to find their Marco Silva, someone that's going to elevate that squad no matter who's in it. Because I think the Fulham squad are a lot worse than the Forest squad in areas. They've got some brilliant players, like João Palhinha. He's gone now, but he was a brilliant player. But Fulham were pushing up 12th, 13th last season, whereas Forest have been languishing near relegation for the last 2 years. For me, they've got to look at that and go, well, how do we find a manager like Marcus Silva? How do we find a manager of that quality? But they can't. The problem is now they're in that precarious position. If they're in the Championship, they can gamble on a manager and then hopefully bring them up the leagues. But being 17th in the league, if you get that appointment wrong, you find yourself back in the Championship, which is not. They want to stay in the Premier League, so it's a tough call. I think Espirito Santo, if they're in the relegation zone at Christmas, he'll be gone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think he'll probably stick around. It'll be interesting to see what they do. If he's out of the relegation zone, he's done an okay job.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Probably
that's the main objective.
So yeah, that is our preview for Nottingham Forest. If you're enjoying these previews building up to 24-25 season, there's going to be another one on screen now where we talk about Newcastle United, so go and check that out. But that's everything from us today. Have your say in the comments below. I'm sure there'll be lots of Forest fans down there giving their thoughts and opinions on everything we've said. But thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.